You know, sometimes we walk through life with our eyes wide open, but our hearts not so much. We think we understand what's right in front of us. We think we value people the way they deserve. But every once in a while, the universe has a way of showing us what we've been missing. She walked away, and suddenly the world felt a little colder, the laughter a little quieter, the sunlight a little dimmer. That's when he realized something he should have always known. Her worth wasn't just in the moments she stayed, it was in the moments she made life better, brighter, fuller. Let's talk about what he learned. You know, we spend a lot of our lives walking past things that are quietly extraordinary without even noticing. We walk past people, moments, gestures, and sometimes the very love that surrounds us, thinking they are ordinary. We assume they will always be there. We assume that the little things, those small, seemingly insignificant actions, don't matter. And most of the time, they don't scream for attention. They don't demand recognition. They don't make themselves known in a way that forces us to stop and take notice. And yet, those small things over time are what make life worth living. He didn't see it at first. He didn't see her patience when he struggled with his own doubts. He didn't see the countless nights she stayed awake silently so he could chase his dreams without feeling alone. He didn't see how her laughter could make the most mundane day feel like something sacred. To him, she was just there, a constant, a familiar presence that didn't need to be noticed because it was simply assumed. And that is how it always begins, isn't it? With assumption. We assume people will always be there. We assume that care is permanent. We assume that love will wait patiently, quietly in the background while we focus on ourselves. We fail to see the intricate beauty of their existence because we're too busy living in the illusion of permanence. Think about it for a moment. How often do we fail to notice the sunlight until it disappears behind the clouds? How often do we fail to appreciate warmth until we're shivering in the cold? It's the same with people. It's the same with love. The true value of someone, of something, is often invisible. It doesn't scream for attention. It doesn't wave its arms frantically to say, "Notice me." It simply exists quietly, steadily, persistently, and we take it for granted. He remembered later the tiny things she used to do without even realizing it, the way she always made sure he had a clean shirt for an important meeting, even if she had stayed up late herself, the way she remembered the stories he told, the ones he barely thought mattered, and carried them with her like treasures, the way she celebrated his victories, no matter how small, as though they were her own. And he realized, too late, that all those small acts weren't just gestures. They were the threads that held his life together, the invisible scaffolding that kept him standing when he didn't even know he needed support. It's strange, isn't it? How absence teaches us presence in a way that presence never can. When she walked away, he noticed immediately what had been there all along. The quiet consistency, the gentle guidance, the invisible scaffolding of her presence. It hit him like a wave he couldn't escape. Suddenly, life felt hollow. Suddenly, the room seemed empty, even when he was surrounded by people. And he realized that her value had never been measured by grand gestures, by dramatic moments, or by words that were loud or obvious. Her worth had always been in the subtle, the unnoticed, the invisible. And now that it was gone, he could see it with painful clarity. I think this happens to all of us. We look for signs of value in obvious places, in praise, in attention, in the things that make noise. But often the things that matter most are the things we cannot immediately measure or quantify. True value is in the quiet. True value is in the background, the shadows, the unnoticed gestures that keep a life vibrant. And when it's gone, the emptiness it leaves behind is a stark, unforgiving reminder of what we overlooked. There's a story I once heard about a man who never appreciated his partner's love until it was gone. They had been together for years, She cooked, she cleaned, she listened, she encouraged, she celebrated. He didn't see her as extraordinary because she didn't demand attention. He didn't understand that extraordinary often wears the guise of ordinary. And then, one day, she left. Not angrily, not dramatically, just left. And he was left with memories that suddenly felt like treasures. Every small act, every gentle word, every quiet gesture, it all became priceless in his mind. The very thing he thought he could take for granted became irreplaceable. It's not just romantic love either, it's friendship, it's family. It's the people who sit beside us quietly, who make our mornings smoother, who steady us when life is unsteady, who believe in us without expecting anything in return. We often fail to notice them until they leave. And when they do, we realize that the true measure of their value wasn't in what they demanded, it was in what they gave without even thinking about it. The human tendency to overlook value is powerful. We live in a world of distractions. We chase the loud, the flashy, the immediately gratifying. We fail to notice the quiet, consistent presence that actually carries the weight of our lives. And this isn't because we're ungrateful. It's because human perception is limited. We are wired to notice what's urgent, what's loud, what requires immediate attention. But the people who truly matter are not always urgent. They are not always loud. They are steady. They are constant. And we only see them clearly when they are gone. He realized painfully that the problem was never with her. The problem was with his ability to see, to notice, to value what doesn't announce itself with fanfare. She had been extraordinary all along, but he had failed to recognize it. And it's a lesson that can be brutal because it doesn't just leave you with regret. It leaves you with understanding. The kind of understanding that reshapes your heart, your actions, your life. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the true gift of losing someone is not the loss itself, but the clarity it brings. Maybe it's the moment when you finally stop taking things for granted. When you finally learn that love, care, loyalty, and presence, these are not commodities that will wait for us to notice. They are treasures that demand acknowledgement. And when they are gone, the void they leave isn't just absence, it's revelation. He remembered her voice in the quiet moments, her patience in the frantic ones, her unwavering belief in him when he had none. And he understood something essential. True value is subtle, it is persistent, it is invisible. And the moment it's gone, the moment you recognize it too late, you understand what it has been giving you all along. It's not loud. It doesn't demand your attention, but it is powerful, transformative, and irreplaceable. We live in a world that pushes us to notice the dramatic, the immediate, the obvious, but life's most important things are often invisible. The love that sustains you quietly, the guidance that shapes you silently, the care that builds you without recognition. And when it's gone, we are forced to confront a truth we should have known. We cannot take what is precious for granted. We cannot assume that quiet devotion, steady presence, and gentle love will always be there. And so he learned. The lesson was simple, but its weight was heavy. True value is often invisible until it's gone. And when it is gone, the heart knows. The heart sees. The heart recognizes what the mind failed to notice before. And perhaps, if we are lucky, that recognition transforms us, not into someone who regrets, but into someone who values, who notices, who cherishes the quiet, extraordinary presence of the people who walk beside us while we still have the chance. We all feel gratitude, don't we? There are moments when we feel thankful, moments when our hearts swell with admiration or love. But feeling alone, it's not enough. Feeling doesn't change the world. Feeling doesn't show people that they matter. Feeling by itself is silent. And yet, we tend to think that just feeling something, just having an emotion is a form of giving. But the truth is, appreciation, real appreciation, isn't a thought in your head or a warm feeling in your chest. It's action. It's tangible. It's something you do. He didn't understand this at first. He felt grateful for her. He admired her patience, her kindness, her strength. He loved the way she smiled, the way she supported him in ways he could barely put into words, and he believed that feeling these things was enough. But she needed more than feelings. She needed to see that she mattered. She needed him to show it, and he didn't. We forget sometimes that love and respect live in our actions. They live in what we do, not just what we feel. She prepared meals with thoughtfulness. She remembered moments from months ago. She held space for him when life felt heavy, and he thought that noticing her efforts internally, thinking, "She's amazing," was enough, but it wasn't. And the reality is, no one can feel the warmth of your heart unless it is expressed. We can admire silently, we can feel deeply, but unless we act, the people who mean the most to us may never know. Think about the small things that matter most. Holding the door, offering a smile, sending a message to check in, listening without judgment, celebrating victories without being asked, saying thank you in a way that resonates. These are not grand gestures, they're small, often invisible, and yet they are the actions that give weight to our feelings. And when they are missing, when the love we feel isn't mirrored in our deeds, it can leave the people we care about wondering if we really see them, if we really value them. He began to notice how subtle, consistent actions build the bridge of appreciation. She wasn't asking for gifts or ceremonies or announcements. She wanted to be seen. She wanted acknowledgement, not just words, but evidence of recognition. It could be as simple as making her a cup of coffee when she was exhausted, listening when she spoke about her day, or celebrating her accomplishments with the same excitement she showed for his. These were actions that required mindfulness, actions that proved he noticed, actions that said without words, "I see you, I value you, you matter to me." Studies in social psychology tell us something simple yet profound. People feel truly valued when others act on their gratitude. Simply feeling thankful is internal. Acting on it externalizes it. And externalizing it is what shapes relationships, strengthens bonds, and fosters trust. It's not enough to think someone is amazing. They need to know it through what you do. And this is a lesson he learned the hard way. He realized too late that he had taken her for granted, not because he didn't care, but because he confused feeling with showing. He admired her strength silently. He loved her kindness silently. And she left. She didn't leave out of anger. She left because unacknowledged effort slowly erodes hearts. It doesn't happen overnight. Appreciation isn't a one-time declaration, it's an ongoing practice. And when it isn't present, it can break the very connections we cherish most. It's easy to forget that actions speak louder than words, especially in long-term relationships. We think our presence alone is enough. We think our love, our admiration, our gratitude will be understood without demonstration. But life isn't telepathic. People don't feel the depth of our emotions simply because they exist. And the moment we fail to act, our feelings, no matter how deep, become invisible. He remembered moments after she left, reflecting on all the times he could have acted differently. When she spoke about her dreams, he could have encouraged her more openly. When she celebrated his victories, he could have returned that energy with acknowledgement and praise. When she supported him through struggles, he could have said thank you in ways she could feel, not just in passing thought. All the love, admiration, and gratitude he carried inside him were wasted because they were never expressed. They were silent offerings that no one could see. Real appreciation, he learned, requires intentionality. It requires effort. It requires stepping out of comfort to communicate, to act, to show someone they matter. And the beauty of this is that it's always within our control. We can't control feelings, but we can control actions. We can choose to act in ways that lift others, that reinforce their worth, that make them feel seen and understood. We can choose to be present, to be mindful, to translate gratitude from a feeling into a force. Think about the impact of simple actions. A handwritten note to someone who always gives, thanking them for their effort. a pause in a busy day to acknowledge someone's presence, to recognize their contribution, a small gesture of kindness that demonstrates you notice. These things cost nothing materially, but they have infinite value emotionally. They are proof of seeing someone, proof that appreciation exists beyond your own heart, proof that the love and care you feel is real and active. And yet, too often, we overlook this. We wait for a perfect moment to act, assuming time is endless. We think the people in our lives will understand our feelings without needing evidence, and sometimes it is only in absence that we recognize the cost of our inaction. He realized this painfully, seeing the emptiness left behind when someone who deserved acknowledgement no longer had patience to wait. It's a reminder that appreciation is fragile, that it must be nurtured through deeds as well as words. There's a quiet beauty in the act of appreciation. It is not performative. It does not need applause. It is not about grand gestures. It is about the small, consistent choices we make every day, choosing to acknowledge, choosing to act, choosing to show that someone matters. It's a practice that sustains relationships, that builds trust, and that honors the people we care about. And it's something that must be done while we have the chance, because feelings unexpressed, no matter how deep, cannot sustain the bonds we cherish. He understood finally that appreciation is not a passive state. It's not a gentle thought in the corner of your mind. It is deliberate. It is active. It is a series of conscious choices that communicate without words. I see you. I value you. You are important to me. And when we fail to make these choices, we risk losing the very people whose presence sustains our lives, whose love strengthens us, whose care holds us steady. And so he learned to translate feeling into action, to take the warmth of his heart and let it manifest in gestures, in attention, in acknowledgement. He realized that it is not enough to feel gratitude in silence. It must be expressed. It must be lived. It must be acted upon. Only then does appreciation become real. Only then does it reach the people who deserve it. And only then does it truly transform relationships, hearts, and lives. We live in a world that lulls us into comfort. Familiarity becomes a kind of background noise, something we no longer notice because it is always there. We walk through our days surrounded by people, by routines, by moments that feel permanent, and we assume they are. We assume that because someone has been here, they will always be here. We assume that because life has always been a certain way, it will never change. But life has a way of proving us wrong, and when it does, we realize that what we took for granted was never permanent. It was always fragile, delicate, and in need of recognition. He thought she would always be there. He thought that her care, her patience, her presence were constants he didn't need to tend to. He assumed that familiarity was a guarantee, that her love was infinite and her support unconditional, and that he could coast on that assumption without ever really giving anything in return. And yet, life has a way of teaching us lessons in the most painful ways. Because familiarity is easy, it is comforting, it is seductive in its quiet rhythm, but permanence is something entirely different. Permanence requires acknowledgement, attention, respect, and action. It requires seeing the extraordinary in the ordinary every single day. We often overlook what is right in front of us, the laughter that greets us every morning, the warmth that waits for us at the end of a long day, the presence of someone who simply chooses to stay despite our flaws. All of it becomes background. He didn't notice how she held space for him when life felt heavy, how she encouraged him when he doubted himself, how she celebrated his victories as though they were her own. He didn't see that her constancy wasn't something to be taken for granted. He thought familiarity was permanence. He was wrong. It's easy to confuse the two. We see someone day after day, and we start to think of them as unchanging. We see someone's love and care, and we assume it will always be there, that time will bend to our convenience. We forget that people are not objects, that hearts are not guarantees. Just because someone is present today does not mean they will be present tomorrow. Just because someone is patient today does not mean they will wait forever. Just because someone forgives today does not mean they will endure indefinitely. Permanence must be nurtured. Familiarity, however, can exist without effort, and therein lies the danger. He realized too late that he had taken her presence for granted. He didn't notice her struggles, her small sacrifices, her quiet moments of vulnerability, because he assumed she would always endure. He assumed that because she was patient, he didn't need to meet her patience with gratitude. He assumed that because she loved him, she would always be willing to give more, even when he failed to give in return. And when she finally stepped away, when she finally chose herself over the complacency of being taken for granted, he was confronted with a truth he could not ignore. Familiarity is not permanence. There's a subtle tragedy in this misunderstanding. We mistake what is ordinary for what is eternal. We think that the rhythms of everyday life, the routines, the small acts of kindness, the smiles, the quiet support, these are things we can rely on without attention, but they are not. Just because someone has been there for years does not mean they will be there for decades. Just because someone has endured hardship alongside us does not mean they will endure it indefinitely. Just because someone loves us deeply does not mean they will allow that love to be eroded by neglect or indifference. He reflected on the moments he could have acted differently. The mornings he failed to notice her exhaustion, the evenings he failed to acknowledge her sacrifices, the times he assumed she would wait while he focused only on himself. Each one became a lesson in permanence and familiarity. He realized that love, care, and commitment are not passive. They are not guaranteed. They are choices that are made every day, both by the person giving and the person receiving. And when those choices are not recognized, when they are taken for granted, familiarity can slip away and leave only absence behind. We all experience this in one form or another. We see a parent, a sibling, a friend, or a partner and think they will always be here. We assume that because they have been patient, loving, forgiving, they will continue to be so, regardless of how we act. We mistake the comfort of knowing someone for the certainty of them remaining. We assume their hearts are inexhaustible, and sometimes life teaches us the truth the hard way. Hearts are not inexhaustible. People are not guarantees. Familiarity is not permanence. There's a story I once heard about a man who realized too late that he had assumed his partner's love was unending simply because it had always been present. She had been there for birthdays, for heartbreaks, for victories, for quiet evenings when nothing happened at all. He assumed this would continue without pause, without acknowledgement, without effort. And when she left, the emptiness was stark, sharp, undeniable. It wasn't just that she was gone, it was that he finally saw in the void she left how much he had taken for granted. Her presence had been a gift, not a guarantee, and familiarity had lulled him into forgetting that. We often forget that people are active participants in their own lives. Just because someone has chosen to stay with us, to care for us, to endure our flaws, does not mean they are obliged to do so forever. Life is not static. People grow, change, and make choices that honor their own well-being. When we mistake their presence for permanence, we fail to recognize the ongoing effort they invest. We fail to reciprocate. We fail to cherish. And when the inevitable moment comes, when they choose themselves, we are left with regret, with longing, with the bitter clarity of what we failed to value. He realized that recognizing permanence requires mindfulness. It requires noticing the small things, the laughter shared over breakfast, the hand held during a difficult night, the way someone listens without judgment, supports without expectation, and gives without seeking reward. It requires gratitude expressed not just in thought, but in deed, because it is through action, through acknowledgement, through intentional care, that familiarity becomes something more enduring. That is the bridge from ordinary presence to true permanence. And yet, even when we know this, it is easy to forget. The rhythm of life, the routines, the comfort of knowing someone will always be there, it all conspires to make us complacent. He realized this as he looked back on all the times he could have acted differently, all the chances he had to honor her presence, to acknowledge her efforts, to treat familiarity as the fragile, precious gift it truly is. And he understood something essential. Life is unpredictable. People are finite. Familiarity is fleeting, and permanence, if it exists at all, is something we must actively nurture every single day. He learned that true appreciation of someone requires constant engagement, constant recognition, constant effort. Familiarity may make life easier, but it can also make us blind. It can make us numb to the very people who sustain us. It can lull us into assumptions that erode connection over time. And the moment we wake up to the reality of absence, the moment we see the depth of what we took for granted, the lesson is both simple and devastating. Nothing is permanent. Nothing is owed. Everything, even love, must be honored through our actions and awareness. We often mistake familiarity for permanence, and in that mistake lies the quiet tragedy of human relationships. But if we can remember, if we can act, acknowledge, and cherish, then familiarity can become something sacred. Then presence can become something enduring. And then perhaps we can truly honor the people we love while they are still here, rather than learning the lesson too late in the echo of their absence. Loss is a teacher we rarely invite, and yet it comes quietly, suddenly, sometimes without warning. It doesn't knock or ask permission. It doesn't negotiate or soften its blow. And when it arrives, it changes everything. Suddenly, the things we thought mattered seem trivial. The people we took for granted stand out in stark relief. The quiet moments we ignored become painfully vivid. Loss strips away the noise, the distractions, the comfort of familiarity, and forces us to see what we might have missed all along. He didn't understand this at first. When she left, he felt a kind of emptiness he couldn't name. It wasn't just that she was gone. It was that the patterns, the rhythms, the quiet presence that he had taken for granted were no longer there. And in that absence, clarity emerged. Painful, sharp, undeniable clarity. He began to see her differently, not through the lens of assumption or expectation, but through the lens of reality. Every laugh, every gesture, every moment of patience and kindness suddenly revealed its full value. Loss taught him to see. There's a strange honesty in loss. When someone is present, it's easy to let moments pass without acknowledgement. We assume time, love, and care are inexhaustible. We fail to notice the strength required to show up day after day, the courage it takes to stay even when things are difficult, the generosity it takes to give without guarantee of reciprocation. And yet, when that presence is gone, the truth becomes undeniable. We see the depth of what we had, what we failed to honor, what we allowed to slip through our fingers. It is a lesson that cannot be taught in theory. It cannot be explained through advice or warning. It must be experienced. The human mind can intellectually understand value, but the heart only learns through feeling, and loss makes feeling unavoidable. He felt it in the quiet moments when the world continued around him, but she was absent. He felt it in the hollow echo of conversations that used to be full of laughter. He felt it in the stark realization that the love, patience, and presence he had assumed would always be there were not guaranteed. Loss teaches clarity because it forces us to confront reality without filters. It removes the comfort of assumption, the illusion that things will always be the same. The belief that presence equals permanence. It makes us see the truth that people, love, and moments are fragile, that we cannot take for granted the extraordinary things hiding behind ordinary appearances, that what we overlooked, ignored, or assumed would always exist is in fact finite and precious. He remembered all the moments he hadn't acknowledged, the small sacrifices she made, the times she waited for him to come home when he didn't realize how long the day had been, the encouragement she offered silently, the way she celebrated his successes without needing recognition. And now, in her absence, he could see everything with painful clarity. Every ordinary moment she had given him, every ordinary kindness she had shown, became extraordinary. Loss has a way of transforming ordinary into sacred. It's something that resonates in all areas of life. We often fail to see the value of someone or something until it is no longer present. A friend who has always been there to listen, a parent who has quietly sacrificed for years, a mentor who has guided us without asking for anything in return. Their absence suddenly highlights what we overlooked. We learn that clarity is born from contrast. Presence feels normal until it is gone. Love feels constant until it isn't. Comfort feels guaranteed until it vanishes. Loss exposes what was always important. He also realized that loss teaches more than just appreciation. It teaches understanding. It teaches perspective. In the quiet of absence, he could reflect on his own shortcomings, his own inattentions, his own failures to act on what mattered most. He could see how his choices, or lack of them, shaped the reality he now faced. Loss strips away excuses, diminishes denial, and leaves the truth bare. It doesn't allow us to hide behind assumptions or take comfort in what could have been. We are left with the facts. This is gone, and now, finally, we understand its worth. The lessons of loss are often accompanied by regret, yes, but regret is not the only consequence. Loss also opens the door to growth. He realized that clarity was a gift, bitter as it was, because understanding what was lost, why it was lost, and what could have been done differently allows us to change. It allows us to act differently in the future. It allows us to recognize value before it slips away again. Loss teaches clarity not just about others, but about ourselves, our priorities, our attention, our capacity for care. There's a story about a woman who lost someone she loved, and in the void left behind, she began to notice things she had never noticed before. The way he laughed at her jokes, even when they were bad. The way he made sacrifices, quietly, without expectation. The small gestures that went unnoticed in the rush of everyday life suddenly became the moments she carried with her, the moments she realized were the essence of who he was. And it is the same for him. When he lost her, clarity arrived, not cruelly, but undeniably. It revealed the depth of what had been, the beauty of what had gone, and the necessity of seeing fully, appreciating fully, while people are still present. Loss has a way of cutting through distraction. It removes the background, noise, the excuses, the illusions, and leaves only the truth. He understood that people, love, and life itself are not constants, they are gifts. Every moment is an opportunity to honor them, to act with awareness, to acknowledge what is real, to engage fully with what matters. And when those moments are lost, the clarity they leave behind is both a warning and a guide. It teaches us to notice, to cherish, to act before it is too late. Pain in this sense is instructive. It forces reflection. It forces honesty. It forces him to see the full picture, the extraordinary embedded in the ordinary, the value in the moments he overlooked, the love he assumed was limitless. Loss leaves no room for complacency. It teaches clarity by showing us exactly what we ignored, exactly what we failed to honor, and exactly what we must recognize in the future. He realized that clarity brought responsibility. It was not enough to simply understand the value of what was gone. He had to carry that clarity forward to ensure that in the future he would see more clearly, act more intentionally, and honor the people he loves while they are still present. Loss teaches clarity, but clarity is only powerful if it transforms action. Otherwise, it becomes merely a bitter memory of lessons learned too late. Loss teaches clarity in the most human way. It opens our eyes, it awakens our hearts, and it forces us to confront reality without filters, without excuses, without the illusions we use to feel safe. He could no longer pretend, no longer ignore, no longer assume. The absence revealed everything he had overlooked. The silence spoke volumes. The void illuminated the details he had taken for granted. And in that painful illumination, he finally saw the value of what had been and what could have been and what must be cherished in the future. We all face this lesson at some point. We all encounter loss in big ways and small, in love, in friendship, in life itself. And in every case, clarity is the gift hidden within the pain. It is a sharp, undeniable, unforgettable teacher. It does not forgive ignorance, but it allows understanding. It does not erase regret, but it reveals truth. And that truth, painful as it may be, is the kind of clarity that shapes hearts, relationships, and choices. He realized that clarity brought wisdom, and wisdom brought responsibility. Seeing clearly meant understanding the fragility of love, the impermanence of presence, the subtle but powerful value embedded in every act of care and attention. Loss taught him to honor the extraordinary in the ordinary, to recognize and act upon love while it was still alive, and to never take for granted the hearts that choose to stay. Clarity, born from absence, became a guide for the rest of his life. Growth is often spoken of as if it is automatic, as if time alone transforms us, as if mistakes alone will teach us something profound. But the truth is, growth does not come from the weight of regret, no matter how heavy it feels. Growth comes from recognition, recognition of what was, recognition of what is, and recognition of what could have been handled differently. It is the conscious act of seeing clearly, of understanding deeply, and of choosing intentionally to do better moving forward. He had spent years thinking he would change when it became too late. He had carried regret like a stone in his chest, replaying moments when he had ignored, taken for granted, or failed to act. He thought that regret alone would teach him, that sorrow for his mistakes would somehow lead to wisdom. But regret, he learned, is passive. It is a shadow that looms, heavy and silent, but without guidance. It tells you what you did wrong, but it does not show you how to move forward. Recognition, on the other hand, is active. Recognition shines a light. Recognition guides the next step. Recognition is the seed of real change. He began to understand this after she walked away. The emptiness left behind was a mirror reflecting all the moments he had ignored, all the chances he had failed to seize, all the gestures of care he had not returned. Regret was immediate, visceral, unavoidable. It clawed at him, a reminder of what he had lost. But recognition, real, deep recognition, came after the sting faded just enough to see clearly. He began to notice not only her worth, but also the choices he had made that contributed to her leaving. Recognition was honest. Recognition demanded that he look at himself fully, without excuses, without justifications. It was uncomfortable, but it was necessary. True growth begins when we see clearly, without judgment, without the haze of self-pity. Recognition is not about blaming yourself endlessly. It is not about drowning in "I should have" or "I could have." Recognition is about understanding the reality of a situation and the role we played in it. It is about acknowledging our missteps, yes, but also acknowledging the value of those around us. He realized that Recognizing her worth was not just about mourning what was lost, it was about understanding what had always been present and how he had failed to nurture it. There is a subtle but profound difference between regret and recognition. Regret dwells in the past. Recognition lives in both the past and the present. It honors what happened while illuminating a path forward. Regret is heavy and stagnant. It traps us in sorrow. Recognition is liberating because once we truly see, once we understand, we can act. He saw, finally, that real growth required this shift, from wallowing in regret to engaging with recognition. Only then could he begin to change, to be someone capable of valuing others, of acting with mindfulness, of loving intentionally. He remembered countless moments where he could have acted differently, moments he now saw with painful clarity. There were the nights she stayed up listening to him talk through his insecurities, the mornings she woke early to make sure he had what he needed, the countless times she encouraged him when he doubted himself. In the moment, he had taken these gestures for granted, assuming they were endless. Now he recognized them for what they were, acts of extraordinary care. Recognition allowed him to honor them fully, even if he could no longer return them. Recognition also taught him to see himself honestly. He could no longer hide behind excuses or distractions. He saw the patterns of his neglect, the ways he prioritized convenience over care, the moments when he chose comfort over connection. It was painful, but growth demands honesty. We cannot grow in the shadow of lies we tell ourselves. Recognition, when practiced with sincerity, forces us to confront our own shortcomings and equips us with the awareness to do better next time. This understanding is universal. All of us have moments where we regret the past, the things we didn't say, the ways we failed to act, the people we ignored, the opportunities we missed. But regret alone accomplishes nothing. It is simply a weight. Recognition, however, transforms that weight into insight. It allows us to distinguish between what was lost due to circumstances beyond our control and what was lost because of inattention, ignorance, or lack of effort. Recognition gives clarity, and clarity is the soil in which growth takes root. He began to take small steps. He began to acknowledge the people in his life who mattered, who gave, who stayed, who loved. He began to express gratitude actively, not just in thought, but in word and deed. He started noticing the small sacrifices of those around him, celebrating their efforts, supporting them intentionally. Recognition reshaped how he interacted with the world. It changed him from someone trapped in regret to someone engaged in the active practice of valuing what matters most. There is a quiet power in recognition. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't boast or perform. It simply allows us to see clearly and to act from that clarity. And when we do, we grow, not as a reaction to what was lost, but as a proactive embrace of what we still have and what we still can build. Growth born from recognition is sustainable. Growth born from regret is fleeting, heavy, and often self-destructive. Recognition transforms pain into understanding, absence into wisdom, mistakes into lessons. He realized that recognition also requires courage. It is not always comfortable to face the truth about our actions, about our failures, about the times we failed to value what mattered. It is easier to sit in regret, to imagine a different past, to feel the weight of loss without confronting it directly. But true growth demands bravery, the bravery to look honestly, to feel deeply, to acknowledge fully. It is in this act of seeing fully and honestly that we unlock the potential to become better, more compassionate, more mindful versions of ourselves. Recognition does not erase the past. It does not undo mistakes, but it does give us the power to move forward differently. It allows us to honor the people we love, to act with intention, to nurture relationships before they slip away. He understood that moving forward, he could not rely on regret to teach him lessons. He had to embrace recognition, recognition of value, recognition of effort, recognition of what mattered, recognition of his own capacity to grow. This was the path to true transformation. He also realized that recognition is relational. It is not just about understanding his own failings, but also about seeing the worth in others and letting them know it. It is about acknowledging their efforts, their sacrifices, their presence, and expressing that awareness actively. When we recognize others, we strengthen the bonds that connect us. We create spaces where care is reciprocated, trust is deepened, and love is reinforced. Growth is not solitary, it is relational, and recognition is the catalyst. Ultimately, he learned that growth is not a punishment for mistakes or a reward for suffering. It is a choice. It is the decision to see clearly, to honor the reality of what exists, and to act consciously on that understanding. It is the transition from passive regret to active recognition, from sorrow to insight, from loss to wisdom. True growth comes when we allow ourselves to see fully, feel fully, and respond fully, not when we languish in the weight of what we cannot change, but when we recognize what we can, starting now. Recognition, he realized, transforms our relationships with ourselves, with others, and with life itself. It frees us from the cycles of regret that trap us in the past and invites us into a present where we can act intentionally. It teaches us to value what matters, to respond with care, to nurture what is precious before it slips away. And when we practice recognition, we not only grow, we elevate those around us. We become capable of sustaining love, connection, and understanding in ways that regret alone could never achieve. Growth, he understood finally, is a choice anchored in clarity, awareness, and recognition. Regret might awaken us to pain, but recognition awakens us to possibility. It allows us to learn, to change, to act with intentionality, and to honor the people, the moments, and the love that enrich our lives. It transforms absence into insight, mistakes into wisdom, and fleeting moments into enduring lessons. Recognition is the bridge from what was lost to what can still be nurtured. She walked away, and that's when he finally saw her, truly saw her, not just for the comfort she gave him or the love she showed, but for the light she carried that could never be dimmed by anyone's neglect. Life is short. People are precious. Don't wait for absence to remind you of presence. Don't wait for loss to remind you of love. Recognize, cherish, act before it's too late. Because when we finally understand the value of someone, it shouldn't come after they've walked away. It should be in every moment we share while they're still here.